Now, Sports Talk with Broads. Here's Hunter Brody.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome to Sports Talk with Broads. I have Geoff Mosher of Inside the Birds with me. We will dissect the draft. I'm so tired of screaming about Howie. I will save that for later in the week. My blood is boiling thinking of that man, which it's never been that way. I'm not going to lie to you, Moshe. It's never been that way, but I have hit a breaking point.
Wait, so you're saying Howie has never reached Gabe Kapler status for you yet? Is that what you're saying?
Not
Nobody
yet.
makes your blood boil like Gabe Kapler. I know that.
We have not hit that point yet, but it seems like we are on track because I don't know what the hell is coming out of the mouths of these front office members. But like I said, we'll do that. Let's breathe. Let's talk about this draft, although that might not really allow us to breathe as we get it. Well, me personally, you're going to help us out and kind of talk about these picks and what it really means. But before we do, we need to hear a word from my sponsor, Ravens Brew Coffee. You know me, Moshe. I'm addicted to coffee. How much coffee do you drink a day?
Not as much as you, but I do drink 2 cups, one in the morning, one in the afternoon.
2 cups, stop it. That's my warm-up. Well, Ravens Brew Coffee has everything. Unique blends. They are designed for different occasions, time of the day, and even different caffeine levels. It's the best in the world. I've tried 7 billion different coffees. This is the best. You have so much variety in blends. Check it out. The link is in the description. Ravens Brew Coffee. All right,
now, my goal in life.
Yes.
My goal in life is to somehow make that afternoon cup of coffee taste as good as that first sip of the morning coffee.
There's two things.
It's not happened in all my years of drinking coffee. Has that afternoon brew been as good as that morning, first sip of the morning?
No, it's never been that way. But there are 2 things in life where it's the first sip or the first bite is just heaven, and it's coffee. Right. And the second for me is sushi. When I go get sushi and I get that first bite of the roll, I'll get 5 rolls, right? But that first piece, and I dunk it in the soy sauce with the wasabi. Oh, stop it.
You really look like a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very sophisticated sushi eater, with your backward hat and your stubbly beard and your big colorful right hand tattoo, right arm tattoo. I would have totally pegged you as a bougie sushi eater.
Well, I am so honored. I am so honored. All right, let's talk about football. That's why we're here. The first pick for the Eagles at 21 was Jalen Reagor. Now, everyone was so fascinated with CeeDee Lamb because they wanted this team to get their guy, that number 1 receiver. They wanted that Julio Jones, and they believe that will be CeeDee Lamb to an extent. Not the same exact player, but you get my point. The number 1 guy. I wanted to stay put. I wanted that 53rd overall pick so they could package 2 picks together and it be just as good as CeeDee Lamb. We know what happened. But keeping with this 21st pick, I like Jalen Reagor. What are your thoughts about him?
Well, I think I agree. I sort of see both sides. Like if the Eagles had traded up to get CeeDee Lamb, and I don't know what it would have cost, but I imagine it's at least a third and maybe a second. I think I would have, at the end of the day, felt when a guy of that caliber, and I do wonder how good he's going to be because he fell not because of medicals, not because of character concern. I mean, the NFL draft just basically told you they felt he was the 17th best prospect, not the top 5 that you saw in the mock draft. So that makes me wonder because there were a few people in the scouting community, Hunter, who told me that while they liked CeeDee Lamb, they questioned the DeAndre Hopkins comparisons and weren't sure. He's kind of a long strider, an upright runner. I'm not sure he's going to be, well, who knows what he's going to be. He may just wind up being kind of a 1,000-yard receiver, not a 1,400-yard receiver and 12 touchdowns. We'll see. But I think I would have said when a value gets within reach and you need a guy like that, I can understand giving up the compensation. But also like you, I felt like it was important for them to have as many picks as possible. And I really felt staying put and making sure you didn't give up a second or a third was a big key for Howie and the Eagles going into this draft. So I had no issue with it. I had done a lot of homework on Jalen Reagor. You know that as being the producer of Inside the Bird. So you're kind of privy to me and Adam's conversations a little bit. And, obviously Jalen brought to the Eagles something they need, some speed on the outside. He's got some question marks. I think everybody from that 21 to 30 do. It's not like, they were drafting in the top 10. I think people need to keep that one in perspective. And I know the Justin Jefferson argument is out there. And I think that it's similarly, if they had taken Jefferson, even if they had to play him in the slot, I think that they would have figured out a way to make it work with him. But I do like what Jalen Reagor brings from an explosion standpoint.
Yeah, I do too. It seems like if you put the ball in his hands, he's going to be able to make some plays with that speed. Now, the speed at the 40 time, it wasn't as good as what we probably would have liked. I'm not a big 40 guy. You know, I don't put all of my stock into that. I've seen him play. I've seen his speed. To me, because it read, I believe, 4.47. Is that what it read at the 40 time? He's way faster than that. We can see that. His over-under for yards set by Vegas was 800.5. To me, I would be thrilled if he was around that ballpark, considering Sanders, Goddard, Ertz, Deshaun. To 800 yards out of him, I mean, I would be very pleased with that.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, especially it's impossible to predict the future, but Deshaun Jackson, if they had to play right now, is healthy and is on the field. So, you know, J-Jaw, as disappointing as he was last year, is still going to get a chance. Greg Ward is going to play some in the slot. Most likely, we'll have to see how some of the other wide receivers they took on day 3 pan out. But it's not like Jalen Reagor is going to step into a situation where he's going to get the ball thrown to him 8 to 10 times per game. Deshaun almost had I don't think Deshaun had 1,000 yards as a rookie. I think he was close, but didn't get it. I just see with Jalen, and especially with no mini camps, no rookie camp. Who knows if there's going to be a training camp? You have to temper your expectations. You know, Hollywood Brown had, I think, like 600 yards for the Ravens last year as a speed receiver in that offense, and that was considered a pretty good season for him. 6 touchdowns, 7 touchdowns, something like that. So I would think anything from 500 to 800 yards is acceptable.
Yeah, especially if he hits us with one of those plays where it's just, that's it. You know, it broke the game open. It was that one big bomb, 50-yard bomb. Who's going to be throwing that pass? Jalen Hurts, Carson Wentz? We don't know right now. But if he has that one big play, I mean, that's what he's really there for. He has the ability with that speed to make that one play. So if he has, I don't know, just say 3 catches in the football game, but one of those was that big-ass play, well, that's kind of what you went out and got that speed for. So I like Jalen
also,
Reagor.
Yeah, and remember what speed does for the rest of the team. So even if he goes out in the first quarter, catches a 30-yard pass because some cornerback soft covered him and didn't realize his speed, now all of a sudden the field opens up for everybody because you may have to back those safeties up a little bit. It's the Deshaun Jackson impact that we talk about all the time on how that helps other teams feast. When you put a guy like that on the other side, you can only have the same kind of impact.
There was one stat that I saw when he got picked, and it was throughout the weekend, and it talked about how he was with press coverage in college, and it wasn't good. It wasn't pretty. So, you know, I'm not questioning if he will be able to beat some of these guys, but if he is struggling with press coverage, and receivers do struggle, and they find a way through technique to get around that and whatnot, you can totally teach that and be coached that. We got to trust another wide receiver coach to be able to do that. But it does concern me just a tad that with press coverage in college, he struggled in the Big 12, and that doesn't really relate to what type of corners he's going to be seeing at this level.
Yeah, and I wonder if the stat you saw was more like percentages or opportunities, because teams, and you mentioned the Big 12, there's just not a lot of teams that even play man press on the outside anymore. I mean, especially in the Big 12, it's not really known as a defensive centric type of conference.
Right.
So a lot of teams just play zone now, and you see them
So
get
if it's a small amount of plays where that actually happened and maybe he did struggle for whatever reason, it could make it look a lot worse than what it is. Yeah, there has to be context.
Yeah, no, but I think it's fair to just say, like, he probably, A, wasn't good at it when he saw it, and B, didn't see it very much. So it is going to have to be something that Marquand Manuel, the new cornerbacks coach, is going to have to work really hard with him on. And again, not Marquand Manuel, I'm sorry, that's the cornerbacks coach. I mean the wide receivers coach, Aaron Moorhead, is going to have to work with him on how to use his hands and his release and get off press better. And again, without these camps right now, that's another thing. It's like with running backs and blitz pickup, right? I mean, they almost never do it in college, so they've got a big bridge that they got to gap by the time they get to the NFL.
Right, absolutely. All right, so we both agree that Jalen Reagor, solid pickup. He's going to help this team. He's not the overpowering number 1 wide receiver that fans really thought about going into the draft, but when you stick at 21, the chances of that are not very high. And if going into this, the philosophy for me at least was whatever you get with your first and second will be better than CeeDee Lamb. Not pleased with this. Let's get into it. Jalen Hurts, to me, the move just doesn't make sense. And now that the draft has been a couple days over, people are convincing themselves, well, this will work, and that will work, and this will work. And there will be plays that will work. If he scores a touchdown on a play, woohoo, I expect that to happen throughout the time here, whatever they end up working. The point isn't, will this work? It will work. There's a reason why the Saints do it, whatever. But at that spot, I'm sorry, when you just paid Carson Wentz, it is not the right move. You just got rid of Nick Foles. You got rid of the noise, and you are opening up that door again. And Howie even claimed that he was surprised by how everybody reacted to this. Now, that would be just ridiculous to think that everyone would be accepting of this if I was Howie Roseman.
It reminded me of a great quote, Hunter, I had in college when I was covering Penn State football. And Joe Paterno was the head coach one time. And I forget what he did, but the opposing coach said that he was perplexed that Paterno did it. And Paterno's response was, well, I'm perplexed by his perplexion, which was, it's always like stuck with me. And, for Howie to say he's surprised by the reaction, I got to say, I'm surprised, Howie, that you're surprised by that reaction. It's like, what, you haven't worked in Philly for long enough to know that pretty much any choice you make is going to come with some kind of scrutiny, but especially a backup quarterback in the second round. Look, I'm with you. Look, I criticize approach. I have nothing against the kid, and he might wind up being a good player. And I've heard everybody and their mother try to rationalize why this can be a good thing or a terrible thing. I've heard it all by this point, right? I'm sure you have too. And I'm not invalidating somebody who likes the pick. I'm not invalidating someone who says that you can do some great things with Jalen Hurts and that he's worth the second round, or that, if Carson gets hurt now, okay, fine. I just feel like when people do that, they conveniently then ignore the cons to just push the pros up for there are cons to this pick. And the first thing that sticks out to me, Hunter, is that I feel like the process with which this pick was made may have flaws. And what I mean is, and they've been very open about talking about it, Doug Peterson, Howie Roseman, and I'm going to throw Jeffrey Lurie in there because he's the owner and he does have to co-sign on every pick. And he's talked himself about analytics and being on the forefront and the cutting edge and wanting to be ahead of everybody else. And I feel like this pick was made with all of those concepts in mind. It wasn't really about Jalen Hurts is the 53rd best player in the draft or is a high second round grade on our board. It's more about quarterbacks. And you heard Howie Roseman say quarterback factory, and we want to do this differently than other people. My thought process is if the entire Eagles franchise, when I say franchise, I mean their personnel staff, their analytics staff, their coaching staff, their front office, everybody all in unison really believe that this was what they want to be, what they want to do, then okay, I say, you know what, I may disagree with it, but that's your philosophy. That's what you do. That's how you run your franchise. If I would have to really feel comfortable, and I don't know this for a fact, but just that everybody in the organization said, yes, let's do this. We win as an organization, we lose as an organization on this pick. And I just don't know. This one kind of feels like an analytical, cutting edge, Jeffrey, Howie, and Doug kind of thing. And I'm not sure that that's the best approach for the franchise.
Do you think Doug is all in on this? Now, I saw his face. It was all giddy, and he looked so happy, but there was some weird delay on the TV, too. I don't even know if that was real time. He might have put on a smile because he knew he was on TV at that moment. Do you think that Doug is on this and he's like all about it? Or do you think this was more of a Howie and Jeffrey thing? Do you think Doug was thinking maybe we go with Mims, maybe we go with Fulton, maybe we go with somebody else in that spot? Or do you think he was like, you know what, I can have some fun with this?
It's a good question, Hunter. I really don't know. I can almost see him on both sides. I do think that he likes the idea of being ahead of the curve with quarterbacks. His own quarterbacks coach, who's now offensive coordinator, passing game coordinator, Press Taylor, has spoken publicly to the media about the concept of having more guys on the field that can throw the ball, and Taysom Hill, and how that is the future of football. But I don't know that Doug believed that it was all that is worth using a second round pick on. And the big question is, how do you think Jim Schwartz feels about it, right? I mean, there were some pretty good corners, some pretty good safeties, and some pretty good linebackers. who went between 53 and 105. And you just have to wonder if those would have been the best. It would have been in best interest of the franchise and the future of the franchise if they went in a different direction there.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Logically, I can't get behind it. I never will support it. I even claimed this in one of my podcasts. If they won 35 Super Bowls, I don't know what number I spit out, but if they won however many Super Bowls with this method, I will still say that is not the right way to approach that in that specific spot. For what they're doing with Carson Wentz, I mean, to me, the only way that this makes sense to them is if they don't believe that Carson Wentz is the guy anymore. Other than that, I don't see how they could possibly really make this move at that spot. And talking about Doug Peterson, for some reason, don't ask me why, I don't know why specifically, but I think he is a little bit, I hate to say it, but a little dumb. I think he's a little dumb. I think Doug Peterson is a little dumb.
If not dumb, maybe subservient and willing to just kind of roll along with what the higher ups and their vision is.
That's such a nicer way to say it.
I tell you this though, the one thing the Eagles have done really well, thank you. Every team makes mistakes, right? And the best compensators of your mistakes are your talent and your coaches. And if you look at the Eagles the last 2 years, and I know everybody wants to fire Doug after every loss, and everybody wants to fire Jim Schwartz after every loss. And it seems like only after the season do we breathe and look back on it and we say, wow, like Schwartz wound up having a top 10 defense with guys I've never even heard of in the secondary and about 4 guys in the front 7 who were lost for the year. Or Doug wound up going 4-0 in December with a bunch of practice squad wide receivers and guys I've never heard of. The coaching staff here is really good, no matter what people say or think about them after every loss. And the quarterback's pretty good too. And the ultimate compensator for when you don't have a wonderful drafting team or you've got some instability at the top end of your franchise is having great coaches and a really good quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. I can agree with that. And I think Doug Peterson is a good head coach. When I say he's dumb, I think, at times he's just, I don't
you mean
know,
like socially
spacey.
dumb?
Yes, spacey. Spacey maybe is the word. Not football dumb. He obviously brings a lot to the table and a leader of men. It's the best way to describe it, and you can't teach that. So he does have something around, that part of his coaching skills. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of Jalen Hurts, I will never support it. I think that the league is going that way. I'm not trying to claim the league will never develop into having 2 guys on the field at once or whatever, but you got to think about value. You got to think of possibly having a Sanders, a Goddard, that type of impact player. Let me ask you this. If you had that pick at 53, which way would have you went? Because you had Mims. You could have had a Mims and Reagor combination, and you wouldn't have to take a flyer on another speed guy. Fulton was in the mix. I mean, you had some, the linebacker. I think you might even be saying, you might go linebacker. I know you had your eyes set on one of them around there, correct?
Well, you know me, like I've been screaming safety for
That's
the
true.
last 5 years. And I think there were a few, like Jeremy Chin was there. Ashton Davis wound up going early in the 3rd round. But when you get late 2nd, early 3rd, it's really just what you're looking at anyway. I would have been fine with Logan Wilson, the linebacker. I thought Christian Fulton, the corner. I thought safety or corner, really. If they didn't take Mims, I would have said that's fine because it's such a wide receiver deep draft that you could have gotten somebody. So the fact that they didn't take Mims or Van Jefferson didn't bother me as much, but I knew it was a top heavy cornerback group and safety group. And, I like the Kevon Wallace pick. I really do. But the ability to maybe have had Kevon Wallace and Christian Fulton and Jeremy Chin, like really and Logan Wilson to kind of really replenish that defense that badly needs it. I thought that would have been their best tack.
Yeah, I would have went with, he wasn't there. He just got picked a little bit before, but Jalen Johnson would have been awesome. And I know you guys actually interviewed him on Inside the Birds, which, by the way, the link is in the description for your YouTube channel. So if you guys did not follow Inside the Birds on YouTube, you definitely should go do that now. But yeah, he went just before the Eagles picked, but he would have been a guy I would have totally liked in that spot, but obviously he did not fall. So all right, we'll move on. You mentioned the 4th round pick, but real quick, in between Hurts and that 4th round pick, we did have a linebacker get taken.
Yeah, we got to talk about him.
Yeah, it seems like from listening to you and Adam Kaplan, it might have been a little bit of a reach. It seems like Adam Kaplan's a little bit more on he's got some upside. Not that people are downplaying the upside, but he feels a little bit more juice around him than, say, some of the other people around the league.
Yeah, although in talking to Adam lately, I think maybe as we've both done more homework, the opinion may have changed. Okay. Yes, he has great upside because he is an athletic freak of nature. By now, most people are familiar with his story that he was Seventh-day Adventist and couldn't even play Friday night football because of his religion, but then he was able to play on Saturdays in college. He only played 2 years at Colorado because he went to JUCO. And look, I have not watched him. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know everything about Davion Taylor. I'm just telling you what league personnel people have told me. And that, yes, the athleticism is there. Yes, he ran like a 4.29 40 at 220 pounds, but the kid is new to the position. He's new to being a linebacker. There's a lot of intricacies, especially playing behind Jim Schwartz's one gap scheme, getting in and out of blocks, finding your run fits, covering. All that stuff is going to be like a foreign language to him. Now, he may be a great kid and a smart kid. Maybe he picks it up and he's able to contribute on defense faster. I'm just telling you that most of the league looks at that and says, just like we talked about with Hurts, where most people felt he was a day 3 developmental quarterback, they felt this guy was a developmental project, and you hope that it all sinks in. The Eagles took him in round 3 ahead of guys who actually have played the position for a while, and that's where the gateway to me, Hunter, as we talk about the next picks, starts to open, where it feels like they were picking, Howie was picking from a next gen /40 time spark athlete board instead of a football player board that counts athleticism as important, but not the be all to end all, or speed, not the be all to end all. I get the idea of wanting to be faster and more dynamic, but the more you hear Howie talk about it, going into offices, can he run? Is he healthy? Does he love football? It almost makes it seem like they prioritized so much of the traits that you wonder how much of the football acumen got lost in there.
I am not surprised at all to hear that, honestly. You're right. The way that you're hearing the questions that were asked, can he run, all that stuff, which is just, I mean, I know a lot of coaches have questions going into this stuff and they want certain things answered, but you're right. It does seem like it was all about speed. Just get people who can run fast and are athletic. The football thing, well, maybe we'll go with the coaching part. Maybe that's how they look at this. We'll coach them to be great. But, I mean, we can use our track record of how the cornerbacks have played, how the wide receivers have played, and you can argue that hasn't really worked in the recent times, but they did make a lot of different changes with the coaches, so that'll be that'll be completely different this year. And you mentioned the cornerbacks coach. He was from Atlanta, correct?
Yeah, Marquand Manuel.
That's the
was
one that I
have
a little bit more. I feel like I respect him the most out of all the other changes for some reason. I think that he's got a decent track record there. So, we'll see what happens in terms of cornerback play. Unless, am I an idiot to say that?
No, I mean, I believe he was on the staff that went to a Super Bowl.
Yeah,
I'm
correct.
not remember. Was he the defensive coordinator? It really doesn't matter because the head coach is the DC, but he's played in the league. Teammate of Lito Shepherd's at Florida, by the way. They played the same defensive backfield, and obviously experienced and fresh new ideas. We've seen the cornerback play lately. I'm not saying it was all Corey Unland's fault, but at least they give him the new guy, a guy who can run at that position, Darius Slay.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I'm interested to see what this kid can do. But in terms of what this pick, a 3rd round pick, means for the linebacker core, it's probably still going to be Nate Gerry and then Brown that they picked up in free agency, right? If not, maybe different other packages. Hell, maybe even Wallace plays in the box. I mean, that's wishful thinking. Will Parks probably Jalen Mills over him, but it doesn't seem like he's going to be making that much of an impact right off the jump unless it's, say, special teams.
Yeah, they may look to sign in a veteran like they did last year with LJ Fort or Zach Brown, but honestly,
Nigel
I think
Bradham is still out there. I don't
know.
if
How about that?
That's something they'd be willing to do.
But the thing is, at this point, Nigel he was never great at coverage. He's really fallen off there lately, but he just in general, he's not the quick twitch, fast guy that he was even downhill against. He's still a good player, but I feel like TJ Williams gave them that at the end. I'm sorry, TJ Edwards.
Oh, yeah, TJ Edwards, correct.
The rookie free agent who made the team. By the end of the year, he was like their downhill linebacker, and Nate Gerry was their coverage linebacker, right, when they were nickel and dime. I think those two are probably going to get a good amount of play. And, Duke Riley is a guy that they will be in his 2nd year with the team. I'm trying to think. Jatavis Brown, right, the guy that they signed from the Chargers. He'll probably get in a little bit of action as well. But, it's the same story really with linebackers. It's the least impressive part of the team, and that's what they do.
Right. So in the fourth round, they went and got the Clemson safety Wallace. It seems like he's got a great head on his shoulders. It seems like he's got the right attitude. It seems like he's going to be a dog, and I really am intrigued by what he's going to be able to bring to the table. It seems if I have the tackles, the offensive linemen, I should say, they intrigue me. They do. I think one of them, or if not both, might be able down the road at some point to make an impact. I'm not saying this season, but I really do like how the Eagles draft linemen late. They seem to work. So from that standpoint, I'm a little pumped for them. But in terms of steal of the draft, without the linemen being in play, Wallace, to me, looks like he could be potentially that in the fourth round. Good value. We talk about Jalen Hurts being poor value. Wallace, great value.
Yeah, I mean, he's their fourth round pick. It wouldn't surprise me if he wound up playing him and Reagor playing the most amount of snaps among all the rookies. I mean, Jalen Hurts, we know, is only going to be there for gadgets. And I want people to understand, we didn't say this, but if Carson Wentz gets hurt this year, because people are saying Jalen Hurts goes right in there. No, he does not. Jalen Hurts is not going to be the backup quarterback this year unless miracles happen. I mean, even Nate Sudfeld might not be the backup because they'll probably still sign a veteran when we get closer to the season. We'll see what happens. But so Jalen Hurts is only going to play a small amount. Davion Taylor, special teams, unless he can get on the field somehow, we'll have to see. But yeah, I think Kevon Wallace has probably got the best shot of everybody they drafted along with Reagor to really make an impact. Now, not early, because as you mentioned, Parks is here and Jalen Mills is here. He'll start on special teams, but I think they can get him in some nickel and dime situations and see what he can do.
Yeah, I'm super pumped up to see him play. It just seems like he has a little bit of it. And when I say it, I'm not making that seem as if he's going to be the best safety in the world, but in terms of where he was selected and his college career, I think that there's stuff that can totally just kind of move into the NFL game, and it can work at this level as well.
Well, of course, the Clemson title helps, right? Yeah. Like if he had the same exact measurables, the same exact career, but he was coming out of Louisiana Tech, I'm sure people would be like, who the heck is this guy, right? But,
I love that you said Clemson. That because with Jalen Reagor, nobody remembers that he was on Oklahoma and he left because of some family stuff and transferred to DCU. He decommitted and went to TCU. But if he played for the Sooners, I would argue that he would be talked about like CeeDee Lamb was, or he would be talked about as some of the other guys. But because it's TCU had a dumpster fire quarterback, it's no longer that great anymore. And you're right, the power of the logo really does speak when it comes to these players, which I feel like is unfair. But we'll move on to the two linemen. We'll package them up together, even though one was picked in the fourth, Driscoll, and one was in the sixth, Prince. What do you think about these two? Do you think one has a better chance to make an impact before the other one?
Well, it's hard to know. I think Prince Tega Wanago is really interesting because he was seen by a lot of scouts as a day two guy, second, third round guy, or maybe early fourth. I mean, depends on just what you want in alignment and your scheme. But because he showed up to the combine with fluid on his knee and couldn't participate, then he dropped. So, I mean, if this guy's completely healthy, I give him just as much opportunity as John Driscoll to compete with Mailata and Matt Pryor. But at the end of the day, you have to hope as an Eagles fan that Mailata stays healthy, that he has no back issues out of camp, and that he emerges as your big V, your swing tackle now. He can play guard, he can play tackle, and then that the Driscoll kid and Matt Pryor and Tega Wanago can and maybe Sua Opeta from last year, one of the rookie free agents. They got a lot of young guys, but not a lot of them have experience. Mailata doesn't have any experience, but what he has cannot be coached, and it just has to be harnessed by staying healthy. He was really getting it last year, Hunter, in before he got hurt. Not when I say getting it, everybody thinks of offensive linemen as, your vertical sets when you're pass blocking, and then your zone runs and your reach blocks and everything. He was past that and getting to the point where he can jump out on screens and recognize the right block in the second level to make. I mean, he was really understanding everything about being a lineman, and it's a shame that he got hurt because I think we all see him as like a Christmas present now. You just want like this guy to everything to manifest, and if so, I mean, who knows what happens? If Andre Dillard doesn't play well, or if somebody gets hurt, he can get in there, and you can maybe see the dawn of this great offensive lineman come into fruition.
That's crazy to think about because with Howie, the drafting thing was an issue coming into this draft. Oh, I hope he doesn't screw it up. I hope he doesn't screw it up. And now somehow he did, in my opinion, and people are now starting to love him again. I don't know how that happened. But if Mailata hits and works, and you're speaking very highly of him because he's doing such a great job, where he was drafted, where Jalen Mills was drafted. When you look at some of these players that he has hit on later in the draft, he's missed plenty. Don't get me wrong. I'm not making it seem like the guy doesn't miss. I'm very pissed off with him right now. So for me to be saying this, it says a lot. If this guy is able to hit Jordan Mailata, a guy who never played football in his life, you got to tip your cap. And once again, I mentioned Jalen Mills as well, a 7th rounder. Pretty impressive picks.
Yeah, and then again, that's where the whole cutting edge, and we think a little bit differently, and we're gonna take this guy with just athleticism bursting out of his 360-pound body, and you can see it in the rugby film where you say, all right, well, in that case, it worked.
Well, here's the difference, though. If you picked him in the 2nd round, or if you picked him in the 7th, it's two different conversations.
Exactly. I'd rather be known as the GM who hit on his 1st and 2nd round picks than the one who hit on his 6s and 7s.
Yes, absolutely. Personally. Yeah, agreed. And it seems like Howie won people back over with that 3rd day. And don't get me wrong, I think he did have a good 3rd day. He turned 1 comp pick into 4 picks. That's pretty good. I mean, that is definitely really good. But a lot of players, a lot of speed. We'll kind of throw all these people in here together, especially the wide receiver. So Watkins and Hightower. One was a 5th. Hightower was the 5th from Boise State. In the 6th, they went out and got Watkins. 2 players who can flat out fly. It seems like in terms of hype, Hightower has a decent amount of hype behind him and his speed. What do you have to say about those two?
Yeah, I mean, the percentage of the hit percentage that you get in the draft, it drops off so precipitously once you get to the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. Some of these guys probably would have been higher picks in other drafts like Hightower. I always think also that when guys play with elite quarterbacks or really good quarterbacks, they tend to be, you can hide their weaknesses and capitalize on their strengths. Like, look at all the guys that have played with Aaron Rodgers that were never high picks. I mean, Alan Lazard last year made some really big plays for them. And I don't know that if you put him on the field with Eli Manning or with, Gardner Minshew, if he's going to even be a decent player, right? I mean, part of that is just playing with a guy who has precise rhythm, timing, and is pinpoint like Aaron Rodgers is. So hopefully your Carson Wentz effect that you saw in December, right, with your Robert Davises and your Deontay Burnett's and your Greg Wards, hopefully that helps and translates to playing with Hightower and Quez Watkins and Reagor and whoever else they throw out there.
Yeah, I don't mind the philosophy. I really don't, because you see players all the time in the 6th, 7th rounds, 5th rounds. They do get very good production, especially some of these speed wide receivers. I mean, there's plenty of receivers around the league that get taken in the 6th round, 5th round, and they're pretty damn good players. So if you did take 35,000 different wide receivers late and also was undrafted free agents, you were bound to hit on someone who will be able to be more effective down the road. If you got to go to the practice squad instead of some of the players you mentioned, maybe it's these guys. How much of an upgrade is that really? We don't know, but you just have more speed, and I don't mind the philosophy that Howie Roseman went with, but I feel as if people get so obsessed with, wow, look at this speed, look at that speed, all the highlights being played on TV when the pick actually happened, and then they automatically assume that, well, this guy's going to be a stud because did you see those highlights on the TV screen when they got picked? Like you said, the majority of these people don't pan out.
No, you're right. I mean, that sometimes that's the curse for those guys that get drafted, the TV coverage that you're talking about, because they only really show the good big plays and you get excited about those guys. So the reality is Quez Watkins will be lucky to make the team, maybe a practice squad because he's a 6th rounder, and John Hightower could make the team, but he's probably going to be a special teams guy if he does that, more so than a contributor on offense, at least at the start.
Yeah, the one question I got asked on Twitter the other day, and I didn't know really how to answer it, so I guess I'll ask you, and you somewhat brought it up, but it had to deal with Greg Ward. And he asked, is Greg Ward going to be on the team? Because I mentioned, is J.J. Arcega-Whiteside even going to make this damn team with how many players are on there at the wide receiver position? And I was sort of joking. I put a picture of him with his mom holding an umbrella under his head like he was at training camp. I can't stand that picture. It's ridiculous. But, of course, he's got to make the team. with Greg Ward as that slot guy, is it possible that one of these burners, I know you mentioned this on Inside the Birds before, that maybe one of these guys can be a slot guy? Well, would that take away from Greg Ward, or do you think that would take away from maybe J.J. Arcega-Whiteside? How would you see that if one of these speed guys works in the slot area?
I mean, you never rule anything out, but it's going to be awfully difficult. And I keep going back to no mini camp, no rookie camp, and who knows with training camp. It's going to be very difficult for a 5th or a 6th round pick to bump out a player who right now is probably 3rd or 4th on the depth chart. Maybe that's, you know what? Now you think about it, like Deshaun's on the depth. Well, let's take Alshon out of the equation for obvious reasons. Deshaun Jackson, Jalen Reagor are on the team. Then it gets really kind of interesting because I assume Godwin's on the team. They traded for him. He has speed and they renegotiated his deal. So you should see Marquise Godwin on the team. But then you have 4 and 5 would be Arcega-Whiteside and Greg Ward. So you got to think, as you said, J. Joe makes the team just being a 2nd round pick. So maybe there is a shot that Greg Ward is unseated. But really, I just think Greg Ward makes the team, and then they keep, say, John Hightower as a 6th wide receiver, and Watkins is on the practice squad. But I mean, we've seen stranger things happen in camp.
We've seen stranger things happen with this team a lot lately.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts at 53. Okay, the last two. One of them is Sean Bradley, linebacker from Temple. Everyone makes the joke, Sean Bradley, ha 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 ha. He seems like a very passionate person in terms of being drafted by Philadelphia, being a South Jersey kid, playing at Temple, playing at the Link. Do you think that there's any substance when it comes to that, to grab on to someone who would be so passionate? I tie that to myself. If I got drafted by the Philadelphia Flyers compared to, say, any other team, I would bust my ass just that much more because I know it's the Philadelphia Flyers. I went growing up, season tickets, you know what I mean? So do you think that that would help him, or do you think he has any chance to be a special teamers right off the bat? Do you think he's more of a project in our 3rd round pick? Where do you see Sean Bradley?
No, in fact, I think because he played at Temple and he's kind of been a linebacker, and he does strike me as someone who's very attentive to the game, and just listening to him speak, that I think he's less of a project as far as understanding the position than Davion Taylor. Now, he's probably not nearly the athlete Davion Taylor is, but you know, you're talking about linebacker here. It's a position that the Eagles are blessed with talent in, and it's not as if beating out Alex Singleton and Duke Riley for the 4th and 5th spots or 3rd and whatever it is going to be all that difficult, right? So I give the guy a fighter's chance. I don't know if he's going to make the team. He could be a practice squad guy, but as far as though what you're bringing up as far as playing it, like, it's funny, as you're saying, like, played at Temple, played at the Link, from Philly, and the first thought that entered my head, which is terrible, it's like Ghostbusters when the original one, when the first thing Dan Aykroyd thinks of is the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Right.
He couldn't help but have a negative thought, right? or a thought that was going to blow up on him, was Jaquan Jarrett. Like, he played at Temple, he was a safety, right? Jaquan Jarrett, I believe, played at Temple. I'd have to go back and look. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if you remember him. He was the safety. The Eagles badly needed a safety in like 2011.
I know the name. I don't know too much substance surrounding it, though.
Yeah, they picked him in the 2nd round, and he just was not even remotely near a player. And he was one. I think he was cut before his 2nd year.
Wow.
And it was, but everybody had high hopes. Oh, well, you know, like, he's a local guy. I think he was from North Jersey, but still, he was.
I think there's something to be said,
2nd round pick,
about that little juice, though. For some, maybe because he was a 2nd round pick, it doesn't hit as much as maybe being a late round guy. You don't hear, you hear the Eagles are interested, but with so many rounds, it's not the same as being a 2nd rounder, knowing what teams are really interested. You throw darts later.
Yeah, he's got juice.
Yeah, so
right. He definitely has some juice to him.
Maybe.
By the way, I don't know what makes me feel older, the nonstop references or jokes about Sean Bradley from the Sixers, or the fact that I covered Jalen Reagor's father when he was with the Eagles. I was a newspaper reporter at the time, and I covered his dad, who played for the Eagles in 2007. So
how about that?
Now I'm covering the spawn of athletes that I once covered, over a decade ago.
Well, how about this? I think you texted me the other day. Oh, it was when we were setting up the interview with Jalen Johnson. And his birth year was involved in something that you sent over.
1999, right?
I think it was something like 1999. I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna be 25 soon. I can't believe I'm looking at something that says 1999, and you're like, dude, ... What are you talking about over here? Like, I don't know. Listen, I'm hitting that milestone though. 25. I don't know why it's scaring me. I don't even want to know what's going to happen at 30. But we don't need to talk about this. We need to talk about the last person on the list, and that is a outside linebacker / D end from Stanford. What is his position going to be here?
I don't know. I feel like that's went in to help pick a kid from Stanford. It's like the Eagles' new favorite school with Ertz and J-Jaw, and they picked a kid a year or two ago from Stanford too. Joey Alfieri, linebacker. They signed him as a rookie free agent last year. He's going to be an undersized, quick twitch pass rusher that, he's going to fit that Joe Osman, Jannard Avery kind of model. Come off the edge, which means he probably won't make the team. They'll probably put him on the practice squad. At that point, you're just looking for raw athleticism.
Sure.
And, a smart kid who can come in and do something.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the defensive ends on this team. I think that's going to be a problem. I am not thrilled about it. They picked up Derek Barnett's fifth option. I assumed that was going to happen. I'm very underwhelmed with Derek Barnett. I hate to say that. I love our defensive tackles, but with this defensive end group, I think it's going to struggle. I really do. I think we're going to see times like last year, there wasn't a lot of pressure.
Would you feel better? Sometimes I think we get locked into concepts more than like looking at the bigger picture, right? Would you feel better if they had 2 Pro Bowl defensive ends, but mediocre, or just like normal, good defensive tackles? Like, does that matter? Because at the end of the day, on third down, you got 4 guys flying at a quarterback. And if the 2 guys who happen to be best at flying at the quarterback are the 2 guys in the middle, whether it's Fletcher Cox, Malik Jackson, or Javon Hargrave, or some combination of it, what's the difference? I think people are like, well, those guys don't get 10 sacks. Well, the reason why they don't get 10 sacks is because when they collapse the pocket and the quarterback's got to move, the edge guys come right in, so.
No, it's a good way. Yeah, you're right. It's more of an eye test, I guess, when it comes to that. It's like, you want to see your defensive ends going. But I think to myself, with Jim Schwartz's philosophy, if they were able to get some defensive end help, how much more lethal it would be. We want the secondary. We want to get the guys. We got Darius Slay. That's great. But you don't need all of that insane secondary, which you do, don't get me wrong, but you don't need as much power if you get that front 7 going. And with Jim Schwartz specifically, that front 7 is the moneymaker. So I just think, if the defensive ends were even that much more better, it would be sweeter with that defensive tackle package that we have.
So would this be a bad time to note that I believe AJ Epinesa was on the board when the Eagles took Jalen Hurts 53 overall?
He was.
Yeah.
That was the way I would have went with it. After I saw how many wide receivers they took, originally
he actually went 54th.
Yeah, he went right after. Yeah. So it was. I would have been okay with Mims and Reagor with 1 and 2. I didn't really see them going that way, but I would have been okay with it. After the draft, once I realized how many wide receivers they were taking and whatnot, that's who I would have took with that second round pick. And we'll see though. We'll see how all these players pan out compared to the low percentage of snaps that Jalen Hurts gets. But I don't want to do that because we're going to end this on a good note. So thank you, Moshe, for hopping on Sports Talk with Broads. How about this? A little Eagles talk.
I loved it, man. I'll do it again anytime you want.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Once again, Inside the Birds, the link is in the description. And follow him on Twitter at Geoff Mosher NFL. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.